All right. We are still moving along the timeline here. We're coming into the 80s. We've been talking about the Larson Group. Uh, Roger, one of the things we talked about in the past was some of the seasonality and the uncertainty of weather. How did you balance that with the demand for product with such a large operation?
I think the biggest thing you did, I think I mentioned in one of the previous episodes that contrary to what you think, when you had a poor crop, your prices usually went up and you didn't suffer as much as you think you'd suffer if you'd have a poor crop. But I think it was I don't know what time it was, in the 80s, we were short of frozen peas and we were going to lose customers. If you don't have a product and somebody does have the product, you have a tough time getting that customer back. We come up with the idea that the southern hemisphere was 6 months out of whack with our hemisphere. So we got in touch with people in, I think it was New Zealand, to grow peas for us 6 months out of sync with our own crops. So we would harvest our peas in July and New Zealand would harvest their peas in December. So we sent a man down to New Zealand, believe it or not. We never thought about that before we were part of Dean Foods. And we sent a man down to New Zealand, and he stayed down there for, I think, the whole season to watch the growing of the crop and the harvesting of the crop. And they actually froze the product in New Zealand and shipped that frozen product over to the United States, and we use it to take care of our customer needs. Now, we didn't make money on it, but we kept our customers. We even bought frozen peas from England. So these are things that you did said, hey, what can we do? And the fact that we do have 6 months out of sync, we could grow a crop, and the quality of the product that we got from there was fine.
You'd mentioned stew veg and potatoes. Did you ever have any issues with the vegetables?
Bisulfite?
With the vegetables changing color?
Yes. Veg-All was in every store in the country. It was a 7-component product. It was potatoes and carrots. I'm going to miss them here. Corn, and peas, and beans, and lima beans. And you'd want bright potatoes, and you'd like to have bright everything. But potatoes tend to get dark if they are in the air too long. They'll oxidize. So we would use bisulfite, and they had been using it for years. But somewhere along the way, somebody had a sickness. I don't know if there was a fatality or not, from bisulfite used to keep salad bars fresh, not related to our vegetables. But as a result, anybody that used bisulfite had to declare it on their label. So now just picture Veg-All being in every store in the country. We had to come up with either a recall on all those Veg-All products or come up with a sticker that we could have the store owner or the helper in the store put on those cans. So we come up with a little sticker the size of a dime saying that bisulfite used or something to that effect. And that's how we got that taken care of. But can you imagine a product like Veg-All, which is in every store? It was a very difficult project, but we got it done without having to recall the product. And there was never any loss of life or any sickness as a result because we had been doing it for years. Along with that, there was strict controls on weights that you put in a can, because with processing vegetables, you have to process a can of vegetables so that the interior, the most innermost part of that can, has the right temperature to kill any bacteria that might be in that can. And if you have too much weight in the can, you tend to go from a convection current to a conduction current. And we kept track of all the records every day on the weights of all these products that we were running. Check the records in the morning and before we released the product for shipment. And somehow or other we had a lot of French style beans, which is a very difficult product to fill in the cans. It's just a big mass, And as a result, we had too much weight in a certain lot, and I said, we have to recall. And there was a difference of opinion in our company about whether we had a recall or not. And I said, well, we are deviating from standards. We have to recall. Because I want to sleep at night rather than have to worry about being accused of doing something that we weren't supposed to. So we called Food and Drug and said we had a lot of beans. We gave them the code. And now it's routine. You hear the news on the radio, lot number so-and-so of meat or butter or whatever it is has to be recalled. But at that time, it was just new and it was a project. So you had to make sure you got every can. Whether we did or not, we made every attempt to get every can of that lot of French-style beans. So we didn't suffer any penalties. We did what we were supposed to do, and that's the cost of doing business.
You'd mentioned in your veg mix lima beans. Is there a story to how you added them to your portfolio?
Yes, it's getting a little ahead, but I think we can talk. This is involving a company that we bought in 1986. Shall we talk about that now?
Sure.
Or? When we became part of Dean Foods in 1986, and they told us to grow the vegetable division. So I had taken a trip out in the Northwest to look at vegetable plants to see what their methods of operations were, and we weren't against trying to copy something that was better than what we were doing. And we also went down to visit Shaw Frozen Foods in Watsonville, California. And at the time they were on strike, so we almost felt like we should roll up our sleeves and work. But we came back and said, that looks like a good company. And we went down there with our treasurer and we ended up buying Shaw Frozen Foods. And they were a packer of spinach and broccoli and Brussels sprouts, a good frozen food plant. A year or so later, I got a call from Jeff Shaw, the manager of the plant, and said, we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to process Fort Hook lima beans. Fort Hook lima beans are a real big lima bean that's almost like 2 quarters. It's a sweet, very tasty lima bean that really only grows in Oxnard, California, in the Oxnard, California area. And there's a certain thing about the soil in Oxnard that lends itself to producing good Fort Hook lima beans. So I said to Jeff Shaw, the man was the plant manager, I said, I'll fly down there and we'll take a look. So we took a look and it looked like a promising deal. There was a couple $1 million involved. So I came back and we had a board meeting scheduled for Dean Foods, and I told my boss, or the treasurer, Bill Fisher, I said, Bill, we have a window of opportunity to come into a new product. He said, what's it going to cost? I said, a couple $1 million. And what can we lose? I said, a couple $1 million. But I said, if it goes according to what we think, we could pay for it in a very short period of time. He said, put something together quick for the board. So here I was, got a secretary, and there's a window of opportunity has appeared to us, and I dictated what we had a chance.
And how much time was there from that conversation to the start of the board meeting?
About 15 minutes. I was shaking. I went in there, I gave the pitch, and Jack Swayze, he was on our board. I think he was president of a telephone company. And I gave the pitch, and he said, that sounds like a house of ill repute above a liquor store. Let's go. And I thought, I really oversold this. But we went ahead with the board approved it unanimously. I went back and I met with the people. I said, is everybody for this project? I said, if anybody's against it, I want to hear it now. Otherwise, no negatives. They said, we're all for it. So we put all the equipment and good equipment at Oxnard, and we had a successful Fort Hook lima bean project. But I'll never forget the comment of Jack Swayze.
So you had mentioned traveling to all these locations. How did you get access to all of them?
You mean the ones that weren't our?
Correct.
Yeah. Well, we found that if you'd go in the middle of the week and the plant management was there, they didn't like to have competitors really, come and look at their plants. So we'd try to schedule our trip on weekends because the people in the plant were proud of what they had done, and we usually could get in the plant. And we went out in the Northwest the same time the Mount St. Helena
Yeah.
exploded. And we even went down there. We had a half a day. So I said, let's drive down there. So we drove down there. We saw where the ash from the volcano had made A-frames out of story-and-a-half houses. It was quite something. Anyhow, we had a successful trip, visited about 10 plants, and then we went down to Shaw and so forth. So,
And were these through an organization then?
pardon?
Were these through a food organization?
Well, they were all processing plants just like we were, different companies. And I was on the board of AFI, American Frozen Food, and I knew these people because I had, as a president of American Frozen Food, I had to attend their conventions and so on, give talks and so forth. So
that was your ticket in.
Yeah, that was the ticket in. But that doesn't mean they liked you because you were still their competition. But Larson grew the frozen vegetable business because we were living on the freight rates from the Northwest. I mean, they had cheaper electricity because of the hydroelectric power they had out there, but they still had to pay several cents a pound for freight to get it to the Midwest market. So we produced it here and we're in the Midwest market, so that gave us a competitive advantage on that.
So how much time did that federal frozen food organization, how much did that pull you into Washington then?
Well, I was on the board of the National Food Processors. The same time I was on the board of the American Frozen Food Institute. But I was on the national board as a result of my being president of the Wisconsin. After you were president of the Wisconsin Association, they automatically put you on the board of the National Food Processors. And I was real active in the environmental matters. In fact, I was president of the environmental committee for the National Food Processors Association. And as a result of that, we prepared testimony that we gave to the Senate committees and the House committees on waste treatment and environmental matters. And it was a real active period. I think the Clean Water Act came out in 1972, and Ruckelshaus was the head guy of the environmental deal of the EPA, and I was even in his office pleading our case. We weren't against changing our methods of waste treatment. We wanted something that we could live with and satisfy everybody, and we ended up, I think our bill at Green Bay plant went from a couple $1,000s to probably $300,000 a year just for waste treatment when they built the treatment plant. And as a result of my activity in the environmental field, I also was on the joint municipal industrial committee in Green Bay to come up with something that was not too onerous for us in Green Bay. And they built the new treatment plant in Green Bay around 1972. And we had people from the meat industry, and we had people from the paper industry, and the people from the vegetable industry. I represented the vegetable industry, and we met with the DPW head from Green Bay and a couple other people. We had various meetings to come up with something that we could live with on waste treatment.
And that was, I think you described it as best available versus best practical.
The best available or best practical. Now, best available we couldn't afford. Best practical we could live with. And we said, give us a chance with the best practical. And really it was a BOD situation, biochemical oxygen demand. And people think if you're in the food business, you don't have any waste problem because it's an edible product. But food production generates a lot of biochemical oxygen demand with dissolved solids. And if you put it in a stream, you can see the bellies on fish pretty soon, pretty quick. So, but we got through it. But it was an interesting time for me in that there was so many things going on. Building a church. Oh, I also built a house in the meantime for my family.